I'm Stefan Baumann and I want to welcome you to another video. Today's video is just chock full of information, so we want to get to it as quick as possible. But quickly, we talk about composition and putting together a composition with the element of a central focal point. That we don't paint things, that we paint effects, and specifically lighting effects. And we talk about how to come up with a focal point using lighting effects. We discuss a little bit about watercolor and how watercolor works, and we also discuss on paintings that sell and what kind of paintings that you want to avoid when putting together paintings that will sell. And we ask that question, so what do I paint? But before we get into all that, we also discuss about finding your passion for painting. I think it's an interesting conversation, and you've got to find out where your passion is and then find the discipline so you have time to paint it. This video is very important for your future as an artist. But before we get started in that, I want you to watch this little video tour of my book. And it's very brief, but I think you'll find it interesting. And then right after that, I assure you, we will get into these deep conversations about how to put together a good composition using the effect of light. I'm Stefan Baumann, and I would love to introduce you to a new book that I just wrote on plein air painting. After 40 years, I finally sat down with one of the best authors that I could possibly imagine for this project and put together everything I know about painting outdoors. And this isn't just an outdoor painting book. No, these are techniques that you can bring into the studio, and they apply to watercolors, acrylics, gouache, and oil. You will be amazed at what you will learn with every turn of the page, every paragraph. We have worked through my videos, my information, my books, my blogs, and brought it all together. And over 2 years of editing, we brought it down to just the facts. This painting book has over 400 pages and almost 500 illustrations. If you see my video, and if you read my blog, and you follow me on YouTube, you know that there's a lot of information. There's a lot of things you don't know that you don't know. I'm amazed at the quality of this book, the pages. It's a field guide. It's a book that you would take outdoors with you and paint on location. It's been organized so you could find your way through my keys. This book explains 40 years of teaching and knowledge one-on-one. All the information that I possibly know about painting is in this book. So run, don't walk, and order this book today.
Get this book, it's awesome!
I don't know if you guys know this, but I actually wrote a book on painting. And in the book, we have the keys. Everybody laughs. Is this the first time you're watching this on Patreon? But the thing is, in the keys, the very first, and the way it's laid out, it's ingenious. My author, she's amazing. I love her. But in the middle, right there in the book there, I don't know if you can see it, but there's colored pages in there. And that gets you to the very front of the keys. And then the very first key in the book that you have to know is a concept. And your concept cannot be about a thing. So right now, you kind of are working on a thing. And the first thing you have to do is ask yourself, and so, the second thing is you have to find the focal point, which is this area. And then you have to create a focal point that's the effect of light. Your focal point has to be about the effect of light. If you don't have the effect of light at the beginning of your idea, especially when you're doing watercolors, you're kind of screwed. My watercolor artists that I coach, they kind of have to learn that. And it's not about putting mastic over it or something. It's like pre-thinking your idea. And when you pre-think your idea, your first concept that you come up with should be a lighting concept, not a thing concept. So yes, you love the elk, but the reality is that it's a thing. If I put an elk into Google, there's going to be 1,434,333 elk. No, there's probably even more than that. All pretty much looking the same, a lot of them in zoos. And then even if you put in art, paintings of elk, it's equally as bad. You have a lot of artists that do it. But the thing is that if you want to get ahead of the artists and establish your name. All you have to do is add a lighting effect and you're sold. It's just amazing how you can actually like just surpass every artist that's out there by just creating the effect of light. And it's got to be an interesting light. You know, you could have just flown light on top of this thing, and that would have been okay. But what's interesting is if you would pick and choose your lighting. So let's take a look at this. Let's get this whole thing here, because that's what we're doing. And I know the homework assignment was to be doing a nocturne or another painting upon the edge of a season. But guess what? There weren't a lot of those. So we'll talk about light today. So let me turn on my light button here. And let's just say, you know, we take this half and we just lighten this part of the elk. And we could kind of even, you know, take it a little bit further, but we take the lighting all the way up in the head. Okay, so that's creating the effect, but only like in certain areas. You'd say, but Stefan, what about the back of the elk? He looks like it disappears. Well, this is where we would actually go in and we would do some checkering. We'd actually like lighten up around the legs and stuff to pull them out and do the background. And if you notice with checkering, it's like a checkerboard. So what we do, I call it checkering. I don't know what it is, but it's a trick that the old illustrators used, and you could see where you could pull up the legs by lightening the background, and then we have the light on the background, and then we could lighten up the butt back here too. Let's see if we actually lighten back here, and this is really where the checkering lies here. This is the golden secret here, one of my many secrets that are in my book, Plain Art Paint. But I know it's in the back. People still ask me, "Did you write that book?" I go, "Oh, yes." But see, okay, so if we look at this, let's see. So you see where the back ends there, and then we come around the front here. Okay, so you could see how a checkerboard works. So a checkerboard is usually light, dark, and that's kind of, they kind of line up. So right where this light ends here on the elk, the light in the background begins. And then you can pull it out that way. But I digress into the depths. Some of you think, oh, I got that idea, but it gets really complicated when you are really pursuing it as a way of painting. Another thing too is, like, if you notice, the horns kind of disappear. And so it would be good to actually bring a highlight into the horns, because they just end up being something that I always said I was never going to be one of these demo artists that works with computer stuff, but a picture is worth 1,000 words. But if you highlight the horns a bit, and then highlight the body of the animal, yeah, it just becomes just more of an interesting thing, and it pops out. And now it's about the lighting effect on the elk, and not the elk itself. We could enhance that by bringing maybe a little bit of light in the front here. But if you also notice, it's all about getting all the light effects around the center focal point, which is in the middle of the painting. You know, this here is your central focal point area. See, somewhere in the middle there is your focal point area. Yeah, you do have that. But all in all, it's pretty good. You've got to watch when you go into background trees that you want the hardest lines to be on the elk and not on. See how these lines on the horns disappear, and then you look at these trees. It's almost like the elk is wearing trees because you can't see the horns. So all that should be softer as things get further back. They get out of focus. That's just the way our eyes work. As things get further away, we can only focus on one thing at a time, and the space for our focus area is about the size of an egg. In fact, if you look in somebody's eyes, you can only look at the left one or the right one, and you know, a person's eyes are about the size of an egg. So I know it's repetitive, but sometimes it takes a village. So let's talk a little bit about composition. So I do like, let's get first the fences. I love fences and paintings. I just don't like them coming up from the bottom of the canvas. You know, like you see here, it's like I've got, you know, my fingers here. It's like, what are those fingers? Why are they there? But when all of a sudden I kind of like, you have them here, it's like they make sense. But when they come out here, it's like, what is that? Here, and then they add a little bit of distance and they kind of come into the painting. Look at how cool that is. And then they kind of add as eye magnets, and we could have a little bit of road going in. So that just makes it a little bit more interesting. Yeah, but the fences are in the painting, not coming up from the bottom. So that's what I don't like. So, all right. So the next thing that we have is that we cut the painting into two. And you said that this is your center focal point area, right? That light of the... So again, if we go straight through, you know, your painting is, you know, that line is like in the middle of the painting still a little bit. Okay, so let's just take a look at the original photo. So what we want to do is, if the light's coming from the left-hand side, if the light comes from the left-hand side, you actually want this over here on the right, within the middle square, which is your middle central, you know, focal point or your golden mean. So that's going to be, you know, the middle central area. You'd want to have the light definitely over. Well, I'm not calling you out. I'm just saying, like, you guys, you have like this incredible opportunity to work with one of the leading artists out here. And it's like, you know, yeah, get out there. I know it's hard. It's uncomfortable. You know, I get from a lot of people, how do I improve my painting? And it's not difficult. It's practice. You got to practice. If you were learning how to paint, you know, play Mozart, you would have to practice that every day, and you wouldn't have the byproduct of a painting. And remember, the nocturne painting came from the conversations we had when we were painting outdoors in Vegas. And everybody just loved them. Nobody, it's like we were eating dinner and people were going, oh, I'm so tired. We did 3 paintings. We do 3 or 4 or 5 paintings a day when I do my workshops. And they're saying, I'm so tired. I said, okay, we're going to do nocturnes. They're going, no, not tonight. I go, we're here for 2 nights. You get 2 times you get to practice a nocturne. And they go, there's nothing out there to paint. And I just want to pick up a light bulb and hit them over the head. I go, are you kidding me? What are the conversations what are the letters that I got? It's like, how do I find my passion for painting? It's like, well, it's not my responsibility to give you guys passion. All I could do is just say, hey, try it. You'll love it. So anyway, they went out, and yeah, after the fatigue takes over, and you'll find this out with always making anything. I've got students, I go, why didn't you paint this week? I don't know, I'm so tired. And then I go, yeah, I get that. Everybody is. We're in very tired times. It's hard for us to get anything going, but when they do eventually, if their coaching call is on Friday, they go, well, I worked last night. And I go, did you work last night because you knew you had a coaching call on Friday? And they go, yeah. And I go, well, how did it feel, you know, when I'm not painting all week? And then, you know, painting Thursday night for Friday coaching, how did it feel? Well, once I got started, I actually, you know, wish I would have done this a couple of other times during the week. And so I said, yeah, you kind of have to make the effort. At one point in my life, I used to do a lot of bodybuilding. And believe it or not, I was huge. I was big, I was muscular. And you're going, why is he going to talk about all this stuff? But I tell you, it takes a while to get into a habit. It takes 28 days, actually. If you do something every day, it takes 28 days to get into a habit. A lot of my students say, I don't have time to paint, and I've got them getting up at 4 in the morning. And after a month, they go, oh my God, I've got 3.5 hours in the morning when I used to do nothing, and now I'm painting. So part of it is you've got to be set up for it. But I would get up in the morning, and I was living in San Francisco. And San Francisco is not a pleasant city in the morning. Samuel Clemens, Mark Twain, said the coldest winter he ever spent was a summer in San Francisco. So it's really cold, and when you get up in the morning, it's foggy. And I would get up in the morning, drive across town at 4 in the morning, go into the gym, put my clothes on, and climb into the chair. And half the time, I was not in the mood. And I made a deal with myself. I said, I will decide if I'm going to work out today once the weights are on my thighs. You know, the 2 double weights. Once they're on my thighs. At that point, if I was too tired, because that's usually what the excuse is, getting up at 4 in the morning. If I'm too tired, at that point, I will take the weights off, walk down, take the shower, and go home. But I made a deal with myself that I would go and do that before I decided. I chose it. And if you watch my videos, you know that I have a conversation about choosing things. And I chose that was what I was going to do. I was going to do that. So I made a deal with myself. You guys make a deal with yourself by doing the Patreon or coming with coaching. A lot of my students would not paint if they did not have coaching. Don't choose how you feel until you're actually in the studio. If you stand in the studio and you start working and your brain starts to shut off and go into a different direction, then pack up your paints and go watch television. It's okay. I give you permission, and don't dwell in the fact that you didn't do it. Just be okay with it. Choose it over painting, but give painting an opportunity. Say to yourself, as tired as I am, at a certain time I'm going to go into the studio and I'm going to squeeze out my paints. So that's already like a mental commitment, because now you have your paints out. I'm going to wet a brush, which means you're going to have to clean it. So there's a little bit of investment there. But if you start reaching for the canvas and it's not there, then scratch off your paints and put your turpentine away. Mine was driving all the way across town and getting into my gym clothes and going into that was my commitment to myself. Try to do that. If you do something for 28 days, it becomes a little bit more of a habit. It becomes easier. But set your alarm clock early in the morning, or if you're going to do a nocturne, just say, I'm going to do it, even if it hurts and I'm bored and I'm tired. But we had the most amazing moonscape this month. I thought all of you were going to go running out going, oh, the moon, the moon. It's just decisions and conversations that you have to have with yourself. The question is there a size? Is there what's a good size for selling? What's a good size? Well, and we had a question earlier about that. I said, what size is that? And then I forget who it was, but she said, well, that's what the gallery wants, or smaller paintings. And I had said, well, the issue with that is really because that gallery has a hard time selling anything bigger. A lot of galleries are like in a mall someplace and everybody could afford a $200 or $300 painting. But when it comes right down to it, you're giving a gallery a $200 painting and they're taking half. And so you're spending a day working on a painting for $100, but then you're also paying for the frame. When you are thinking about your painting, you got to be thinking about your time. There is sizes that I recommend. I recommend that no artist should work on anything smaller than 12 by 16. And the reason for that is that a 12 by 16 canvas ends up more likely in a living room than a bathroom. And if you do an 8 by 10 painting, that's usually going to end up in a bathroom. A 5 by 7, where does somebody put that on? A little tiny easel, and they put it up on the shelf? It's like, no. It's like, you don't want to be a shelf painter or a bathroom painter. You want to be a painter that people, respect, that your paintings go into the living room. So 12 by 16 is just kind of big enough so it doesn't fit over the toilet very well. And you kind of come out of the darkness of the bathroom and into the living room. So for your own reputation, for God's sakes, quit painting small paintings. At the plein air convention, I got in so much trouble because I was like, what is this with all these little paintings? And Lori says, well, I told him to paint little. And I go, but we're here in Denver. How often are we going to be here? And These artists that are sitting here, 250 artists that are sitting here, most of them want to make a living with painting. And if they're doing little tiny studies on little tiny boards and stuff like that, you're wasting the day and you're wasting your time. And for the most part, your little sketches are never going to make it up into a bigger painting. So a 12 by 16 canvas is the best. Smallest that you should work, it's the best size. If that seems too much to take on in a plein air painting, then practice. Go to a bigger brush. Practice bigger. If you're going to do small paintings, you'll never have the ability to paint bigger. Is there things that are too big if you're going to paint outdoors? It's like, yeah, 18 by 24 is about as big as you're going to do. Be reasonable with the amount of time. You got 2 or 3 hours. So there's that real cushy spot. Another thing about painting outdoors, or if you're going to paint outdoors as a whole, is that you want to have all of your supplies the same size. So if you're painting outdoors, you want to have, like, if I say 12 by 16, then everything should be geared for that. Your drawing boxes, your canvas sizes, everything stacks up really neat. Everything is stacked up. 12 by 16 is also a canvas that you can get framed fairly easy. It's one of the largest common sizes. 16 by 20 being probably the most popular. But 12 by 16, you have to learn how to paint like that. In one of my workshops, one of my students came in, she heeded my warning, and she brought 12 by 16, but she was like the first few times she'd ever painted outdoors, and it was really hard for her to get started and try to paint in 2 hours, because that's usually the time frame you have for a plein air painting. So at the beginning I said, oh no, maybe I should have started a little bit smaller. What was I thinking? And I gave her some bigger brushes and stuff. Within the next couple of paintings, she was painting as fast as everyone else using larger brushes. And she said, oh my God, this is so much fun. It's so much more freeing to do that than it is like this. And guess what? The benefits of that is that a 12 by 16 painting sells, for, I don't know, $600, $800. You get $400 in your pocket. You make more money on the frame, because if you're pricing your paintings, you want to be able to have your frame cost plus double, so that you're making money on that frame. And because it's a larger frame cost, you're making more money on the frame itself. It's just silly to waste your time painting on anything smaller. Size matters when it comes to painting. And so yes, but be reasonable. You can't do a 24 by 36 painting, and it's impractical to throw it in the back of your car. It's too small. I mean, I had one artist that I didn't have this conversation with early on, and after a while I said, let's go have an art show. Let's do something, because part of my coaching is to try to get students to show their work. And they go, well, and I go, what? And they go, well, all my paintings are like 5 by 7. I go, you've been painting 5 by 7 paintings this long? I said, yeah, you can't even fill up a wall. I mean, if you did decent sized paintings, you put 1 or 2, but if you have 5 by 7 paintings, you've wasted all that time. You could have been doing better work. It's more prestigious, it's better to practice, you get more arm room, you loosen up a little bit. That artist started to do larger paintings, and his paintings became really fabulous with brushstrokes and stuff, because he was so much freer than working on a 5 by 7. So no little paintings. These are big painting zones. I remember when I started painting, I would paint with bursts of energy. I wanted to paint this, I wanted to paint that, and everything I painted I liked. Yeah, it's fun. When you don't know things, it's like fun. It's like, oh my God, I can paint. Look, I covered this canvas. It's like, oh, that's fun. And then he says, with your teaching, both from Patreon and YouTube, and all of those techniques that I'm teaching him are sinking in, I think I've made quite a good progress. And you have. You also said yourself, you need to watch what you put out into public. That's part of my coaching and Patreon. And that's my coaching and coaching, is that, you got to kind of watch out what you do. And it's like, people are going to start looking at your work. And as you start getting better, the heat is on. You have to paint bigger, better. People are going to be watching, and you're going to have this time where, yeah, painting was fun, but then you realize there's more to painting than just painting, yeah. And then you have to like get better with your painting, and in that process, your artwork starts to suck because you got to figure out all this other stuff. You got to learn how to paint. A lot of people can play music by ear, but when they start learning how to read music and learn how to put together, all of a sudden they lose that ability to play by ear. And then comes the journey of learning how to do this. And painting is not easy. And when you start realizing that you're responsible for what it is that you put out there, you have to be very careful. A lot of my students get very sloppy when they start putting paintings out there of plein air because, you know, oh, let's just put paint on and just have a lot of fun with it. But the reality is that painting is actually really hard. And the more you learn, the more you realize you don't know. And then you start learning. So that this person says, so when I pick up a subject matter, I'm full of doubts. I'm full of doubts. Where before he was like joyful. Oh, I'm just going to paint a flower. I'm going to paint a rose. I'm going to paint a dish. So that's fun. But now it's like, oh, what am I going to paint? That's pretty common. Artists have to do that a lot of times. Is it good enough subject matter for me? Does it connect with my autobiographical art? Like, is it part of your story? So part of this is your storytelling. Is it just too obvious? Is it too trendy? Am I trying to pick things that are trendy that everybody's out there doing? And will it be sellable? Now, pretty much all of those questions there are ego-based. You're worried about, you know, it's like if you were practicing how to become a musician, you don't have this byproduct of this painting. And so somehow we feel like this byproduct of our painting is worth something. If you talk to artists like Richard Schmidt, although he's passed away, and some of these other artists, the reality is that if you ask them, you know, well, how did you get to painting? And they sat there and they said, oh, it just was something I did my whole life. I just did it since I was 4. I can't imagine. I was always good. They're con men. They're charlatans. They're imposters. Because if you talk to them in quiet and get them drunk a little, they'll say they have a whole garage full of crap. You've got to go through a lot of crap to get to somewhere where you find the light on the other side. And you're not going to find yourself just, you know, through a couple of weeks of painting. It takes a lifetime. And if you look at artists like Jackson Pollock and these other artists, they spent years trying to find a different way to paint. Once they discovered that, they realized that it was just a reproduction of what they did. So you look at Rothko and Jackson Pollock, they find, yes, something clever, something wonderful. It's like, yes, they're great artists. But then they become copiers of their own technique. So you can't fall into that thing like, I'm going to find a different way to paint. You got to have honesty. So one of the things that I had early on in my coaching, this guy calls me up from Australia and he tells me, he says, yeah, I'm thinking about coaching with you. And I go, fine, tell me your story. And so he says, well, I'm so-and-so. And I was like, okay, I don't know who you are. And he said, I spent my early 30s doing questionnaires to galleries and people and asking them what they like to see in a painting. And he did a huge computer file on the likes and dislikes. And then he started looking for photographs and paintings that had all those elements in it. And he said, right now, I can sell a painting for $100,000. And I go, who are you? And so he told me again, and I looked him up and I was going, oh my God, that's you. It's like, I recognized his artwork. I didn't recognize his name. And he says, yeah, he says, I've got orders the rest of my life. I've got galleries that call me every day going, where's my painting? We've been waiting 2 years. This client, we should all be in that predicament. And he said, yeah, obviously he's making a lot of money with whatever he's doing. He hired somebody to nag him. He should have hired me to nag him. But he hired somebody to nag him to paint. Can you imagine? It's like, yeah, so your spouse isn't doing that for you? It's like, you know, But he just lost his interest in painting. And I said, that's interesting. I'll get back with you. So I went out and cleaned the barn and came back again. And there's something about working with horses that you can always get the answer. Horses always have the answer. So I told my horse about the situation, and he looked at me like, I don't know what you're saying. But somehow he told me this. He said, so I called him up. And I said, I got the answer for you. And he goes, what? And I said, you will never know the joy of painting your children. You will never have the joy of painting a place with your wife while you're having picnics. You will never have the joy. You're so caught up in trying to get your compositions together that you're so tied into the next photograph off of a calendar that you could reproduce. In fact, you rely on other people to provide you the imagery to do the kind of painting that you think sells so well. And every painting for the rest of your life is that future. You know, you're scrambling around for these images to fill your quota. And that's not what painting is. That's a way to make a business, but who wants to make a business like that? Don't be a Thomas Kincaid and choose a road or a rut that cut you into a way of painting that you can never paint any other way. That's kind of the rut that, and I told him, I said, you're just like Thomas Kincaid. Yeah, Thomas Kincaid made tens of millions of dollars, but he couldn't paint anything except what the galleries told him to paint. And that's miserable. If you're asking me as your coach, how do you pick a subject matter, that you feel like you have doubts? It's like, really, you have to choose subject matter that inspires you. Don't look for the perfect subject matter. The perfect subject matter is just on your desk. Something that you'll walk outside, your children playing in the sunlight, your wife sitting in repose reading a newspaper in the beautiful lighting. It's always about the effect of light. You could stick anything in there, but you should be connected with it. It should be autobiographical. It should be about your life. That's, we look at Monet, these artists that were painted this way. All this modern art stuff, it's like, how can I impress the viewers? How can I blow people away? How can I show, yes, Jackson Pollock, I'm not going to touch the canvas anymore. I'm going to pour art, It's like, it's just like taking art and taking it as a craft. But we as artists are just very special people on this earth. We're very sensitive. We pay attention to things that other people normally don't. And it's usually through the effect of light. Like Monet used to say, I got to go out of my garden and paint the light. And so he'd go out and light would happen, and that's what he would paint. And you can go to the same place. Sometimes you wake up, you go out in your garden and it sucks. It's just, it's weedy and all that. And sometimes you get up in the morning and the light comes through the trees, you get some beautiful dapple lighting, and your dog comes out and he sits and he finds his light. There are times, oh my God, if you guys ever come to a workshop at the ranch, the lighting and my horses are just amazing. I've got these beautiful gypsy horses with white manes, and when they're just standing in a certain way and the light hits them, it's like Jesus has just opened up the gates and just, And how can you not be inspired by that? If I was just painting horses, it's boring, but getting that light to shine through their mane and tail at a perfect thing, that's inspiration. That's when you pick up a brush and you paint. In fact, what you could do is take your phone and just spin your phone. You've took hundreds of thousands of pictures in your phone, and I know all of you have. All of you have got pictures in there, and you say, oh, someday I'm going to paint this, and someday I'm going to paint that. And guess what? When I have students that do coaching, they go, what's next? And I go, you tell me. Well, I don't know. I don't know what to paint. And I just want to pick up a tube of paint and throw it at them. It's like, pick up your phone and spin it and put your finger on it. There's going to be a picture in there when you were inspired saying, I want to paint that someday. All of you have cameras that are filled with that. Those are personal moments that you walk through. And the thing is, if you're a plein air painter, you make the effort to at least get something on the canvas. Then you come back and work on it. But a lot of you just take the pictures and you never go back and look for them. You never go back and find your own experiences of really awesome things. And then you come to a teacher like me and go, I don't know what to paint. And it's so sad because beauty's around us everywhere. And we discover that through light. One of the things that I teach is how to paint light. And when you capture light, beauty's everywhere. You could take an ugly old woman and light her beautifully. You could take a beautiful child and ruin them without light. But if you master lighting, if you master your life, if you look around you and not worry about painting things that will sell, because a lot of people do that, but you're going to be a Jackson Pollock, you're going to wish you never had. You want to know what sells? Little cottages with a lot of flowers on them. That's what sells. Thomas Kincaid figured that out. Go copy Thomas Kincaid. And you'll sell. But will you end up with a heart attack, dying early, because you're an alcoholic? No, don't worry about that. Don't worry about fulfilling anybody else's dream. You are the creator. You're the artist. What moves you is what the world wants to see. We don't get enough of that. When you touch, moved, and inspired by your subject matter, that's when great art is created. And it doesn't matter what that is. You can get people's attention through the effect of light. You master lighting, which is, the main focus of what I do in my courses. Oh, by the way, I have a book out there, The Ultimate Plein Air Painting. This shows you how to do what I'm telling you, but you could just listen in and look at your phone and look at every special photograph that you've ever taken, and you will notice that the light is what makes it special. And it's the light that binds us in what we are doing. We go through life and all of a sudden we see these moments, and most of the time they're light moments. Most of the time something's happened with light. And if you concentrate on that, you will never have a boring picture again. In fact, you'll be so inspired that you go, I need 2 lifetimes. I mean, there's a reason why Monet lived to be so old, or Michelangelo, Leonardo da Vinci. When you see people painting with their little gloves on going, oh, I don't want to get poison and stuff. These guys bathed in turpentine. They inhaled dry pigments. And they lived forever because they had passion. Passion is the key to life. You learn how to be passionate, and you learn to express passion, and you are a passionate person. People are drawn to you. Every day's a party. Everybody loves you. That's the secret about painting great art. And then the ability to try to share it. Having the ability to do that is why you take coaching. And it's not easy. And you're going to end up with a whole garage full of crap. But on the other end, you're going to be a master painter and people are going to remember you. So anyway, with that rant, I look forward to talking to my Patreon students next week. See, I told you, there's so much in this video. If you want more information about being part of these conversations, you can do so on my website, www.stefanbaumann.com, and there you'll find information about joining up on my Patreon group, which is a good place to start. I also have another downloadable free book on painting, plus you'll get information on where to acquire my new book that I just put out. If you're interested in going to some of my workshops, you want to go to the workshop sessions. If you're interested in going to some of my workshops, you need to go to the workshop section on my website. And if you want to get coaching, seriously, if you want to become a better painter, you got to have a coach. Michael Jordan had a coach, Tiger Woods had a coach. If you don't think you can get somewhere and think to do it without a coach, I've got something for you. My students go from 0 to 1,000 just in a few weeks of coaching, and it's not inexpensive. And don't make that excuse that, well, I'm not quite good enough to get a coach. That's why you get a coach. So text me, 415-606-9074 if you're afraid to talk to me right off the bat. I'll get back with you, 415-606-9074. Or better yet, just call me. I pick up my phone at 415-606-9074. Until then, remember, next week, paint with passion. I'm Stefan Baumann, and thank you for joining me. I'm Stefan Baumann, and I would love to introduce you to a new book that I just wrote on plein air painting. After 40 years, I finally sat down with one of the best authors that I could possibly imagine for this project and put together everything I know about painting outdoors. And this isn't just an outdoor painting book. No, these are techniques that you can bring into the studio, and they apply to watercolors, acrylics, gouache, and oil. You will be amazed at what you will learn with every turn of the page, every paragraph. We have worked through my videos, my information, my books, my blogs, and brought it all together. And over 2 years of editing, we brought it down to just the facts. This painting book has over 400 pages and almost 500 illustrations. If you see my videos, and if you read my blog, and you follow me on YouTube, you know that there's a lot of information. There's a lot of things you don't know that you don't know. I'm amazed at the quality of this book, the pages. It's a field guide. It's a book that you would take outdoors with you and paint on location. It's been organized so you could find your way through my keys. This book explains 40 years of teaching and knowledge one-on-one. All the information that I possibly know about painting is in this book. So run, don't walk, and order this book today.
Get this book. It's awesome.